we'll pass over to Brett at this point and see how his team is shaping up.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because there are a few players, like Kurt mentioned there, that are sort of in potential injury doubts. And because it's 2 weeks away, big players like Carvajal and Neuer, will they make it or not, And if they do, they'll be great picks, I think. But because it's 2 weeks away, it is quite difficult, isn't it? So I've got a very rough draft, but much like Kurt, it's probably quite questionable. I've actually gone with Pickford in goal. So
interesting.
Yeah, I didn't initially think I would put too many England players in, but their group is very favourable. There's no way around that. They have got a very nice group, and whether or not England do well, I think they're going to do okay, but they're going to be organised. I think they only conceded like 3 goals in qualifying. Granted, their group was quite favourable there too, but that's still impressive. It's a very impressive record to only concede the 3 goals. And Pickford, I think he'll be number 1. Obviously, if that does change, I can swap him. But he's had a decent season, makes good saves as well. I've gone for Otamendi as my centre back. Argentina, they're in a group with quite a conservative team, quite defensive teams. Iceland, they're going to be organised. Same as Croatia. I think they got a clean sheet in them, Argentina. They only conceded like 16 goals in their qualifying in 18 games. That's less than a goal a game. So decent stats there. And he popped up with a few goals for Man City this season. So, it's been quite prolific this season. So I'm always looking for defenders that can pop up with goals, obviously. I've gone for Joshua Kimmich of Germany as another defender. I'm quite pleased to see that he's listed as a defender, obviously a wing-back. In the Champions League, he got a few goals. He can chip in again. So I think for Germany, he's a defender that could pop up with a goal or 2 as well. At the moment, I've taken a bit of a punt on Victor Moses because he is listed as a defender on Fantasy iTeam. So on other fantasy games, he's a midfielder, so he's less appealing. But for Victor Moses to be a defender, he's a very attacking player. 11 goals in 29 for Nigeria. That's a very impressive goal scoring record. So if he's a defender, that's a bit of a steal. As a cheap option, I think he could be a good little shout there.
You helped hold up a few of my drafts during the season, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, because obviously he's an expensive asset in FPL, isn't he? Like he's 6.5 million or thereabouts.
Rotation central as well, though. That was the only problem.
Yeah, of course. But for Nigeria, he's like the budget option, if you like. So he's got his goal-scoring defender, but he's a budget option for Nigeria rather than an expensive asset for Chelsea. So I think that's a good little opportunity to have him there. Could change, obviously, but that's my defence, just 3 at the back. I got 4 in midfield, so I've gone for Christian Eriksen. Obviously plays for Denmark, so not the strongest team, fair enough. But 11 goals in qualifying. He's just the main man there, isn't he? It's good to pick out players where the country just relies on that player. Like Sweden is when they had Ibrahimovic, for example. I know they don't now, but when they did, it's one player that team looked to, and I think Eriksen's that man for Denmark. He'll be on penalties and free kicks, and he just had such a good qualifying campaign. He's had a great season for Spurs. I'm quite liking Eriksen as a pick. I've gone for Coutinho, like Kurt. I think Kurt said he's got Coutinho too. It was a toss-up between Coutinho and De Bruyne, so that could switch because I haven't got any Belgian players as it stands. I just think Belgium haven't done it at a big tournament yet, and they've got some great players. But if Hazard takes all the plaudits one game and De Bruyne is there, I'm not sure if De Bruyne is going to be really attacking or whether he's going to sit back a bit and sort of deep lie, playmate from deep. They've got a lot of attacking other players, so it could switch to De Bruyne, but Philippe Coutinho, he's come into some good form for Barcelona the last couple of weeks. He can score goals. I think he's a better goal scorer than De Bruyne, maybe. That's arguable, but it's a complete toss-up there. But I'm quite happy with Coutinho. I got Raheem Sterling for England. Again, I'm just going back to their group, and it's such a favourable group. So Raheem Sterling, he's had an amazing season. A lot of chances, could have had a lot more goals if he had put the chances away. It's a bit of a punt because England, you never know with them, but I think he could be the main man for them this year. especially if he keeps going into the middle of the pitch like he was for Man City. As a cheap option, which I'll expand on a bit later when we go through the groups, but obviously in my research for the groups, I've gone for Farfan.
Oh.
Or
Who's that?
For Jefferson Farfan. He is from Peru.
Yep.
Peruvian. And yeah, I mean, looking at the groups, when I looked at Peru before, because my knowledge of outside the Prem isn't great, but I assumed Peru would be a bit of the whipping boys of the group. But actually, they were very impressive in qualifying. They topped Argentina, I believe, in their qualifying. Jefferson Farfan scored a lot of goals. He's like the main man. Granted, he's 33, but he's a midfield player that could play as a forward, you know. So I think he's a decent option as a budget player. And he's got like 3 in the last 4 games. Gets a lot of goals for Peru. Again, he's like sort of their main man, you know. So even though he's a bit on the older side, he's my sort of punt, if you like. Up front, I got Messi. You know, it's they haven't scored many goals in qualifying, but it's sort of avoid Messi at your own peril, really, isn't it? You know.
Messi's Messi.
And it's almost like not owning Salah in the FPL this year. You know, it would be quite scary. A lot of hiding behind the sofa not to own him, I think. At least for the group stage. Let's see how he does. You know, there's don't need to explain Messi really. He's surely going to do well. I've gone for Jesus, as has Kurt. Couldn't afford Neymar. I think Jesus, he gets a lot of goals for Brazil. You know, he's been in decent form, consistent for Man City. So I quite fancy him in what is a decent group for Brazil. And then as you know, not a cheap option by any means, but I've gone for Werner, for Timo Werner of Germany. I've just been a big fan of his. I haven't watched loads of him. It's not like I watch, you know, German football a lot, but just impressed with him. And yeah, I think, you know, again with Germany's group, I think he could be a good little pick there. So that's my team. That's my team so far. That's the 11 I've got, but it could change. There's still 2 weeks to go.